Okay, stop. Okay, so I got in trouble for talking about things that I didn't think I broke any rules. Talking about certain stuff, but I have to talk about certain things. That's the reason I'm making videos, is because I feel like there needs to be commentary. Things need to be pointed out. And I don't expect people to like what I'm saying. I don't expect. Look, I'm getting no likes. I don't know that anybody's watching what I'm saying either, but I'm not going to talk about, the latest trends or nail polish or anything like that. So if I get in trouble, I get in trouble, but I didn't think I broke any rules. So we'll see what happens. So I have a warning. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and talk some more, and I'm going to try to talk about current events without getting in any more trouble, but we'll see. So I brought up before the lies in the media and everything that's happening and the way things are being done. And okay, so I don't normally do gossip. I don't normally do stuff like that. I brought up early in another thing how um, there was, gossip news items about Henry Cavill having a new girlfriend, and it was making me laugh because everybody was all upset and crying on Twitter and everything. And, so I looked at the stories. I said, I don't have anything else to do. I'm paying attention to this stuff. But with a lot of other things, something doesn't make sense. Now, this morning on the news, they're talking about Prince Philip's funeral. And they're talking about how the Queen, due to the restrictions they have over there in England because of the disease, is going to have to be in the chapel by herself, and that she's going to have to stay 6 feet away from her family because they're not part of the same household. This is the kind of stuff that I was saying about when people are making all these drastic moves and they're getting engaged or they're finding the loves of their life or their soulmates and, all this stuff. I don't understand, because if we were following all the rules that we have in our separate places. I live in Massachusetts. We've been in some sort of lockdown since this began over a year ago, and we never completely came out of it. There are other states like Florida and Texas and stuff that have had eased restrictions and or just didn't have them, and we have mostly still been in lockdown. We've never completely come out of, like, we were never completely all the way back open. We've always had to wear masks still. We yeah, a little, there's been a little bit more shopping and stuff like that, so we've been coming out of it little bit by little bit in increments, but we never had the strict lockdowns that I would read about in England and see over there. So when they're talking about all this stuff with the Queen, I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense for what you're supposed to do. But in this country and stuff, people have funeral rules and stuff like that. Again, I don't know that they were as severe in England. In England, I remember seeing many stories about pubs and restaurants and them begging the government to let them open back up because they, weren't going to succeed and stuff like that, and that the rules were too strict. And I would see this because I watch BBC News at night, and which they're mostly American news, but I get some British news by way of YouTube. I watch ITV News, and I get tweets and stuff from different English things, different English newspapers that are about England, and so I know they've been in more lockdown than us the whole time, and they were really ramping up all this vaccination stuff so that they could get out of this. Okay, so in both countries, the thing that has never made sense to me is film productions, because I know that the movie business is a money-making business, and I know everybody wants to be able to have their jobs, but film production seem to be able to get away with stuff where they seem to be special, and they seem to be able to go back to work when other people had to still stay home, but it was supposed to be there under these strict rules and all this stuff like that. So I know even in Massachusetts, they've had a lot of movies start being made while the rest of us were stuck in the house. And but it's supposed to be really, really locked down. That's why I brought up the other day, Ben Affleck hugging George Clooney on the set, and I'm like, were they vaccinated? Because they're not in the age bracket of people who should have gone first. And, I'm not saying that, obviously people making a movie together, it's going to be silly if everybody's wearing a mask inside these films, because I don't know that the films are going to be about this time where we're under lockdown and stuff like that. But I was just like, for what the rest of us are going through and what all the rules we have to follow, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's an idea with like some of the sports and everything that people lived in a bubble, meaning they weren't allowed to associate with people, they weren't allowed to visit their friends and family, so that the film production, or the sport, football, basketball, whatever, would be protected from outsiders coming in and contaminating the situation, right? So this is what I'm saying. So anybody moving around, anybody changing their lives, anybody getting married, having a new relationship, whatever, I don't understand how that could flourish or happen under these restrictions. Now, like I said, the Queen is not supposed to, they're saying the Queen of England, who's like the most important rich person in England, is supposed to have to be alone in the chapel, and she can't be within 6 feet of her family because they're not part of the same household. They're obviously family, right? Okay. So then, like I said, this story about this actor's girlfriend coming to basically, I guess, live with him in England while he was making, not a film, he's making that TV show, The Witcher, that he's on. And I thought they were supposed to be in a bubble. And I'm just saying to myself, nothing makes sense anymore because, okay, when this story came out, a lot of people who were bigger fans of him than mine thought it was a setup, a PR stunt. And I've been a person for a long time who followed people. It looked like a PR stunt. Look, you suddenly see a actor who's usually doesn't have a lot of their business in the street suddenly walking their dog hand in hand with a new girlfriend, and you say, okay, that PR stunt or not, whether they're really together or not, that looks like they want to be seen together, right? And then they make it what these people now call Instagram official, because I guess that's how people say, okay, we're boyfriend and girlfriend now. But again, this is not normal times. This is under this situation we have with this disease and all the rules. So right away I saw people saying, well, wait a minute, I can't be with my friends. What's this, right? So I thought this woman was somebody who, I knew she wasn't English when they started saying who she was, but I thought she lived there. She supposedly works in the film industry, so I thought she had been working over there all this time. That's why she was in England. That's how they got together. And but still, I still was like, but how are people dating? Because I thought that wasn't allowed, over there. Okay? In this country, when there's a holiday, like Easter just passed, they're like, oh, you're not supposed to mix with too many people in your family. You should wear masks, and we don't want there to be another surge. So if you have to have a family gathering, like Christmas and all these things, you weren't supposed to get together. People were supposed to not see their families, The only thing that's supposed to let people get together is the future where everybody's vaccinated. So yeah, people were allowed to meet with family members on Easter and stuff like that. But I remember Christmas isn't that long ago. They were talking about real rules about how many people could be together and acting like people were going to, report on your neighbors if there's more than 10 people and stuff. And it was like, that's how it was here. And we were never in such strict rules. And then I'm saying to myself, nothing is making sense. This is why my brain's going to break, because it's taking in information that's telling me everything's a big fat lie. And we're going through all of this. All of us, not just people on the bottom, a lot of people are going through this. And the rules apply to somebody, but they don't apply to other people. And I'm saying to myself, okay, this guy, he seems like a nice enough person. Henry Cavill, he seems like a nice enough person. These could be, a publicity stunt, because people, like I said, bigger fans of his than I felt like in the past. Some of his relationships had been publicity stunts. There are people who, sometimes Kate Winslet came out saying that she thought there were a lot of actors in Hollywood who were still in the closet, and that maybe a lot of actors are still gay and everything, and hidden gay because they wouldn't get work if people knew. So there are a lot of fans who thought, well, maybe this was a publicity stunt to prove that he's not gay. And but again, so it's like you're thinking about that and stuff, and people are talking about that, and you're like, wait a minute, how are people getting assume the whole thing's true and it's not false? And this is a nice new couple, and they love each other, and they want to get married and have babies and all this. How did this happen? Where they got together, and you say, okay, well, they had an online relationship, and then for how long, and then they decided they wanted to be together, so she went there. But we're not supposed to travel. We're not supposed to go here and there. So this is what I'm saying. Wait a minute. The queen can't be within 6 feet of her family, and her husband just died, and she can't be within 6 feet of her own family. Everybody knows their family, but because they're not part of the same household, and they're doing it to prove to people that these rules are important. You know, they're going to make the queen adhere to the rules to prove these rules are important. Meanwhile, the whole world is seeing that this actor had an American from, I guess, California. If she's from California, California is one of the worst places for being locked down in this disease and stuff like that. So if they weren't together before, if it was an online relationship or something, and then she went out there to basically live with him while he was supposed to be in a bubble making a movie, you know what I mean? And then so none of it made sense. And then I'm like, then I wake up this morning and talking about all these restrictions on the Queen of England, and I'm just like, I went to England years ago. I don't have money. I've said that before. And what we're getting into now, what my topic here is becoming is, I want to say it's a class thing, but now it doesn't even make sense. When I went to England years ago, it was like, I'm so bad with dates, including years. It was 2011 or 2012. It was in the beginning of the year. That's why I get confused. So, I don't have money. I didn't have money then. I decided that before I died, I wanted to go out of the country because I had always meant to travel a lot, and my life didn't go the way I wanted it to. So I said, I'm going to go to England. I'm going to go. Something possessed me, and I said, even though I don't have money, I'm going to charge a trip, and I'm going to go to England. I don't have any money, but I'm going to do this. I was a huge figure skating fan. I wanted to go to England. I saw an opportunity. They were having the European Figure Skating Championships in Sheffield, England, right? And I said, all right, before I drop dead, before the world ends, because remember the world was supposed to end in 2012, I said, let me try to squeeze myself. Let me try to just do one thing off my bucket list. And if I kick the bucket, fine. All right. Which I almost kicked the bucket a few years later. But, so I had like a couple $100 for snacks and stuff like that after I planned the trip and everything. So I'm like, fine, I'm going to go. So I go. I looked up everything. I found out all the things you need to do and, the rules and everything. And this, of course, this isn't when there's any disease on. So I fly into Manchester, right? And, I get off the plane and I gotta go through the checkpoint thingy, right? Well, do you call it customs? I guess you call that customs. And so then the lady's like asking me all these questions, and she's like interrogating me, and I'm starting to get scared that they're not gonna let me into the country because to them it didn't. I guess it had something to do with me traveling by myself, which it never occurred to me that in this. I'm not a group person. I'm not a joiner. I always do things by myself. I'm a by myself person. I'm an only child. Like I said, I don't have a lot of friends. I always was. I had, in the past, I had people I hung around with and stuff like that. But I never felt like, oh, I can't go to the movies. I always went to the movies by myself. I went to concerts by myself. I went to things by myself. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I know a lot of other people don't like to do that. but I'm perfectly fine being a loner. And, I always thought of people, after they graduated from college, backpacking across Europe. I didn't think they had to go in a group or with somebody else. So she seemed to think it was like it was this thing I had to prove I was really going there. I don't know if they thought that somebody traveling by themselves was going to be a terrorist or I don't look like terrorist, or just a fat chick going to see figure skating makes sense, to tell you the truth. And I'm telling her about, showing all my plans. I got the hotel. I was going to be there for like 5 days. I had the plane ticket to come back. I mean, it was a round trip. The hotel was paid for. It was, and I'm sitting there. It must have been like 20 minutes. They were just seeing if I can come into the country. It seemed to be because I was poor, because I was by myself. And somehow, and I hadn't traveled. I hadn't had a passport before that because I didn't have the money, and it just seemed like something that seemed completely innocent to me was a good reason to not let me in the country, that it didn't make sense that a single person by themselves would travel to England to go to something, an event, which was a big event. And, finally they let me in, but I got really scared that they were going to be like, no, you have to leave now. It doesn't make sense to us that a poor person would come here, that somebody who's not ultra rich would come here and try to, go to a international sporting event. So, that always kind of bothered me a little bit. And she was just basically saying, well, if you travel more, it'd be different. So once you go to more places, you won't have this problem. And it's just like, what? So, okay, so rich people travel more. I guess they're better than me for that too. But, okay. So I'm thinking about that now on top of this stuff so I'm saying to myself, okay, there's all these restrictions. I don't understand people making life decisions. I don't understand them getting married. I don't understand them getting engaged. I don't understand them moving in with, or moving. Because to me, just moving, when I was hearing people move from state to state, I thought, in this country, in the United States, I said to myself, how is that allowed? How can you do that? And I guess there were never strict rules that you can't. But if you were trying to follow the rules and not spread a disease, stop the spread, how is everybody moving state to state when there's all these restrictions by state? So much of this has not made sense to me. I'm not saying I would have done stuff if I thought the rules were lenient, because I couldn't. I could now, but I couldn't for a year for other reasons. But so just trying to understand how things have been going on and how people are doing things has confused the hell out of me, right? If like Aaron Rodgers and Shailene Woodley are getting engaged, that didn't make sense to me in this country, like I said. But I don't think that they're in states that are as strict as other states, okay? But like I said, to me, when I thought of strict, I thought of England, and I kept watching their news. The reason I was following the English newspapers was because it seemed like during this crisis, whatever they did in England, they did here next, in Massachusetts, New York, and the states that were strict. So it seems like whatever happened in England, we were going to do it a couple weeks later. So that's why I was really paying attention to, I thought I was really paying attention to their rules. So this whole thing, and I'm saying to myself, nothing is making sense. So I'm thinking about all this. I'm thinking about how are people getting together. I'm thinking about, and then I thought of how difficult a time I had going to England when there was no pandemic and there weren't all these kind of rules. And because you have to go through a checkpoint. So I'm saying to myself, okay, forget about if it's right or not. Forget about, if it's publicity stuff. Forget about any of that outside stuff. My brain just went to, how does a person from, let's presume California, could be New York, anywhere in this country, how does an American get on a plane, land in England, and with all the restrictions they have, move in with somebody who they weren't in a relationship before? And how does that person, if that's the reason they're going there, it's not essential business, it's not a funeral or something like that, because people had to postpone weddings and things, right? So it's very confusing. And I'm saying to myself, how that checkpoint that I'm thinking about, that I had such a hard time getting through because I was poor and it didn't make sense to them when there was no disease going around. How is it in the middle of all this when we're being told constantly we can't move, we can't do this, we can't do that, and the restrictions seem stronger in England? How did she just get in there? How did she get through a checkpoint? What was the reason, excuse that allowed an American to go in and move in with somebody when the Queen of England can't be within 6 feet of her family at her husband's funeral because they're not in the same household? These people, they were becoming the same household, I guess. That's what I'm saying. So is it like you can't date somebody, you can't go out on a date, you can't go to a restaurant together and, make out in public, but you can just immediately move in together? Does that make the rules? Does that make the rules not count? So two people in this country, I don't even know. I mean, like I said, the rules here were never that strict. But you still weren't supposed to blend households. They said that here too. In places, forget about the other states, but in places like, California, Massachusetts, New York, some of the states that have always had the strictest lockdown measures. Blue states, yeah? The bluest of states were the most locked down. And like I said, as somebody in Massachusetts, I always felt like England had stricter rules than we did. So I'm just like, this is why I sit here and I'm like, I'm supposed to be figuring out what to do for myself. And I personally don't want to get sick. I don't want to end up somewhere where I have to start over and I don't know anything. I don't want to live here either. That's why it's like there's so many reasons why I can't make a move. But I'm seeing these people make moves that they're not necessarily huge moves if it's just all for show, or it's just like, well, let's pretend, we're, really serious because we want to bend the rules and be together because I'm sick of being by myself, or so, I don't even know. But it just, nothing is making sense to me. And like I said, I was thinking about it, and I'm listening to the Queen of England, listening to the news, I'm talking about the Queen of England not being able to be near her own family during this funeral, and yet this publicity stunt outing of a relationship was like it was normal times, and people could just, because celebrities always do that. They'll be like, oh, they're together and they have a hidden relationship, and then they want to make it official, so their press people, even if they're not hiding being gay or anything like that, their press people will be like, okay, we'll tell the paparazzi that you like to be at this park at this time, we're going to go for a walk together holding hands. You know what I mean? It's been done a million times over when people, it's not necessarily like just for publicity stunt. These are real relationships where people want to be. And I'm not saying these people aren't in a real relationship. I'm just saying, you're sitting here, you're in the house, you're still mostly locked down. We can go around and move about, and I do whatever I can. You know what I mean? But we're still facing restrictions. So you're getting a lot of information through the TV, through the internet, and just by that way, because all this stuff is supposed to be controlled, and they're supposed to be making you believe a thing. And I'm like, the information coming through is not making sense. So, especially in something where, like I said, you have somebody who's making a TV series, or I don't know, internet series, call it that. It's so confusing. They're making a series where I believe they were supposed to be in a bubble, much like I said, basketball, football, these kind of things. And so I don't know. I feel like either a lot of rules were broken or there's no real rules. And it's just guidelines or things they're telling you. And they're forcing people to feel like if they do things for their own self, if they do things for their own life, they're going to kill other people and spread a disease. Meanwhile, there's no actual rules. You could just get on a plane and go to England and hang out with somebody you met online and, you know, see if you want to have a real serious relationship or not, and it's fine like normal times, and all the rules are just a bunch of crap, you know. Either, you know, or the rules don't apply to the rich. But if that was the case, then they wouldn't apply to the Queen of England. This is why. So they're making a public spectacle of the idea that the Queen and them are, even though they're the most important people in England, that they're still following the same rules as everybody else. But then you see a story like this, and you see stories where film productions are all over the place, and these people, remember there was a long time ago, there was a woman, and she was so upset because she had done everything she could to have her restaurant be compliant, and she put outside seating, and they still shut her down. She spent a bunch of money trying to make her restaurant compliant in California so that she could continue to run her business. This was a business owner, just a woman, a normal woman, just owning a business, trying to survive with the restrictions and all the things. She shelled a bunch of money out to make outside seating for her restaurant so because she got shut down anyway. And then right across the parking lot from her was a film production, and it was like that was fine, but she wasn't okay to run her business and try to keep herself afloat and survive during the pandemic, during the lockdowns. At almost 100% sure this was California. I think it was somewhere around, I think it was Northern California. I think it was somewhere around San Francisco. I could be wrong, but it became a viral thing, and everybody was like, that's not fair because the film production do whatever they want, but this woman trying to keep her business afloat is being shut down, even though she shelled out a bunch of money to do exactly what the rules said. You know, and this is what I'm saying. This is that elite shit compared to normal people. And then, like I said, in this case, you're just seeing stories, conflicting stories in your mind. No, this actor can start a relationship, you know, what do you want to call it? It would be a long distance relationship if she didn't go there. So can start a relationship with somebody when everybody else is locked down, but the Queen of England can't be next to her son when his father died and her husband died. I don't know. It's just like lies don't make sense. And when you're being lied to all the time, if you're an honest person, you sit there and you think about it, it's like, no, it doesn't make sense. That's why when you're honest, like I am, I'm sorry, I'm honest, and you go through life, you just see all the lies all day long. Everybody's lying all the time. And it's crushing because you're trying to survive and be a good person in a world where you're almost forced to lie to get ahead. And in this situation, I'm saying to myself, was I supposed to have lied? Was I supposed to have broken rules? Was I supposed to just done whatever I wanted and to save myself, to make my own situation amenable, you know, or something I can have a future? Was I supposed to ignore everything and not have been locked down for a year and not have been stuck in the situation I've been? Was I supposed to just do whatever the hell I wanted and ignored everything and been one of these horrible people that tries to kill grandmas by not following the rules, you know? I don't know. It feels like, it just always feels like the bad guys are winning, or the liars are winning, and the dishonest people are winning, and everybody else is doing their part. Poor people suffer. Poor people get trampled underfoot. Small business owners, you know, and then the elites do whatever they want, you know. And it's funny because I thought about it. I was thinking about film productions, and I remember that thing of Tom Cruise last year completely screaming at people on the set because they were standing too close to each other looking at a monitor, right? And like I said, I do not know that the rules have gotten any more lenient on film sets. I don't really know. But I'm thinking of him screaming at these people, and some people being like, well, he should scream at people, and then other people like being like, no, good for him. He understands that there are rules and you have to follow them, and they don't want to get shut down. But it looks like film productions won't get shut down. You can do whatever you want, I guess. I don't know. There's no bubbles, there's no anything. It's all made up. And so why? I don't understand why people are standing down and letting their stuff be. I'm gonna put this up without fixing the audio again because it's too long. I just have to, when I explain, and that's why I feel like I'm good at explaining, it just takes me too long. I pull in all the information I have and I put it all out there and I go back around, and that's why it takes me so long to say what I'm saying, because I want to get all my reasonings and all the things in my head that are making me say what I'm saying out so people can understand that I'm not just, oh, this is my idea, here it is, boom. I could do that. And I could not give all the background information because I don't plan on coming back to it over and over again. So in my opinion, these two stories that I just happen to have in my mind about an actor having a new girlfriend move in with him while he was making a film or making a TV series in a country that's locked down. Presumably she's coming from a state that was very much locked down. It has so many of the ingredients of the bullshit of this thing where studios and movie productions have been able to go ahead with supposed tight restrictions, and that's why they're able to do that, and other people weren't able to open their businesses, have their jobs or whatever, and how the elites have their own rules and the rest of us have to just deal with it. And these ideas in my head, when things don't make sense, I get stuck on them. And like the kids say nowadays, make it make sense, because it doesn't. So that means it's bullshit. So all these rules, all these countries' rules, all these travel restrictions, all this stuff about, bubbles and stuff like that that's supposed to be keeping people safe, it has to be all BS. Somewhere there's BS. Somewhere there's lies. And the Queen of England, like I said, the Queen of England is going to have to not be next to her family during this terrible time, not hugging them and stuff, because they're not part of the same household, and that's obviously meant to be a show for people so that people will not hug their families and mix households. Meanwhile, it's obviously just a show, and it doesn't really matter, because if it mattered, then you wouldn't have other stories like the one I'm talking about. So, alright, I'm gonna shut up now, but this is what I'm saying. Nothing's making sense right now. I've been responsible. I've done what I'm supposed to do. I feel like I'm suffering for being a good person and being honest and not breaking rules throughout my whole life, not just now. But this is really sickening, because like I said, I have two stories about British in my head that don't go together, and they contradict each other, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And let the Queen hug her son, for Christ's sake. Okay, because you're just lying. You're just full of shit. Okay?